Twin-Blade Rogue, the bottom-tier cleaner who farmed weak monsters in modern dungeons, suddenly obtains Mythic-class swords, and 2 of them. Momonga Iris. Pre-chapter, the Holy Sword and the Cursed Blade. Holy Sword Lightbringer. Long ago, in another world, before it fused with Earth, this holy sword was wielded by a hero. Spirits gathered stardust to create its core. An ancient dragon forged it within its own body. When that dragon died, the blade was born. Its name became Lightbringer, the one who summons light. The sword possesses powerful effectiveness against undead spirits, evil beings, demons, and mana creatures. It has strong resistance against attacks from dragon species. The sword also grants recovery effects for stamina, magical energy, and life force. Mental magic is completely nullified. Magic attacks of intermediate level or lower are also nullified. The sword connects directly to the soul of its owner and rejects anyone else who attempts to wield it. Although extremely durable, the blade itself is dull. Even if the edge slips across skin, it cannot cut flesh. The true cutting power comes from the magical blade contained within the sword. Its real strength is striking enemies with magical impact rather than slicing. This design exists because undead demons and mana creatures cannot be properly destroyed through simple physical cuts. The holy power of the sword crushes them instead. As a secondary benefit, the sword is extremely effective for holding back power. The wielder can deliberately strike opponents without killing them. The former hero who used this sword was said to have defeated many human opponents without causing deaths because of this trait. Although the sword possesses divine and holy qualities due to its origin, the wielder does not actually need to be a righteous person. The previous hero simply happened to be someone with strong moral character. Lightbringer itself has no will or consciousness. The sword measures 1 meter in length with a blade width of 18 centimeters. It is a hand-and-a-half sword designed for 1- or 2-handed use. A decorative hook is attached to the guard. This hook was a practical metal fitting personally requested by the hero from a dwarf craftsman. When not in use, the blade appears as a dull iron color. When activated, it emits a pale blue glow. Cursed Blade Kagetsu. This cursed blade was born from the distortion created during the World Fusion event of 1999. The original object was a nameless sword carried by an unknown samurai. That samurai once defeated a group of bandits in the mountains. After the battle, his blade broke and he discarded the shattered weapon on the spot. That broken nameless sword became the vessel. Countless memories of war gathered into it through the distortions created by the fusion of worlds. Those memories eventually solidified into the cursed blade known as Kagetsu. It takes the shape of a sword. However, its true nature is a cursed artifact that pulls the future where a target has already been cut. Swinging the blade or thrusting with it functions as the ritual that activates the curse. Because the curse originates from the distortion of the world, anything that exists within the world can be cut. No exceptions exist. The blade pours countless memories of battle into its wielder. Through this process, the user is forcibly transformed into a master swordsman. Because it is a cursed artifact, the blade has no sheath. The curse activates by merging directly with the soul of the wielder. In other words, the wielder themselves become the sheath. When not in combat, the blade is stored inside the body within the soul. When battle begins, the user draws the cursed blade out from within their own body. Like Lightbringer, the blade itself possesses no will. However, the memories of battle flowing into the user partially override the user thoughts during combat and force optimal actions. This does not mean the sword desires bloodshed, it simply possesses that property. The blade length measures about 70 centimeters. The edge is dark red and black. The guard is black and the handle is black as well. A decorative cord is attached to the pommel. This cord loosely wraps around the wrist of the wielder. Because the blade is fused with the soul of the user, this cord represents that connection. Even if the blade is thrown or dropped, pulling the cord instantly returns the weapon to the hand. The cord can extend and contract, but it cannot allow the blade to move too far away from its wielder. When combat ends, the blade dissolves into particles and appears to melt into the surrounding space. In truth, it simply returns to storage inside the body of the wielder. Chapter 1, Episode 1. Hayasaka Toru is a dungeon cleaner. Age 20. Male. Single. This is his 3rd year doing the job. After the world fused with another world, dungeons appeared across the globe. These labyrinths contained monsters, rare treasures, magical relics, and valuable monster materials, just like the fantasy stories people once imagined. Those who explore these dungeons are called explorers. The best among them are treated like modern-day heroes. Everything they bring back from the labyrinths is incredibly valuable. Sometimes their discoveries even change everyday life for ordinary people. S-class explorers appear constantly on television and in newspapers. Some explorers even live like celebrities. There was once a prophecy claiming the King of Terror would descend in 1999. In truth, the end of the century brought something else entirely. The world itself changed. It merged with another world and became one. A quarter of a century has passed since that event. Toru activates a body camera at the entrance of Sugai Dungeon.
This is Toru, starting the stream.
Toru Hayasaka confirms the broadcast has begun on his handheld terminal. With a completely unmotivated walk, he steps into the dungeon. The entrance slope is wide enough for a large truck. After walking down the slope, the tunnel quickly opens into the dungeon corridors. The walls, floor, and ceiling glow faintly. No light source is needed, but visibility fades after about 30 meters. Toru wanders forward casually. At an intersection, he senses a monster approaching from the right. Toru raises the weapon in his right hand. It is a blunt iron weapon. More specifically, it is a homemade club made from 5 steel rods about 1 meter 30 centimeters long welded together. The grip is wrapped with rough cloth. A small monster leaps toward him. It is called a fuzzball. The creature is roughly the size of a tennis ball to a volleyball. Its attack method is simple body slamming. The impact is roughly as strong as a high school athlete throwing a basketball at full force. If several surround a beginner explorer, they might panic. Toru is completely used to it. Toru sidesteps half a step. The club swings down. The fuzzball is smashed to the ground. Toru immediately stomps on it. He repeats the motion 3 times.
Fuzzballs 3.
Toru mutters the count into the body camera microphone with a completely lifeless tone. He searches the area where the monsters died. Dungeon monsters normally vanish when they die. The only thing they leave behind is a magic core. A magic core is a condensed lump of magical energy. In the modern world, it is used as a power source even more efficient than electricity. However, the monsters in the upper layers of Sugai Dungeon only drop tiny cores the size of rice grains. Even so, enough small gains eventually add up. Toru picks up 3 tiny cores and tosses them into the pouch at his waist. Then he resumes walking through the dungeon with the same bored expression. Monsters continue appearing along the way. The upper floors of Sugai Dungeon only spawn 3 types of monsters: fuzzballs, giant rats, and demi-goblins. None of them are dangerous. Even beginner explorers quickly stop bothering with them.
Rat 4. Fuzzballs 6. Demi-goblins 2. Rats 2. Rats 3.
Toru casually walks the dungeon corridors. Every monster he encounters is smashed, beaten, or kicked aside. It is extremely boring work, but it is still a job. After the world's fused dungeons appeared everywhere. The continent of Atlantis also appeared in the ocean northeast of Australia. Sea levels rose across the planet. Several volcanic eruptions were even stopped by the breath of an ice dragon. Dungeons have a dangerous trait. If left alone, they eventually go out of control. Magical energy accumulates inside the labyrinth. When that energy passes a certain threshold, powerful monsters appear that normally would not exist in that dungeon. Those monsters then lead the other creatures out of the dungeon. This phenomenon is called a dungeon stampede. Some people compare it to a cat coughing up a hairball. The dungeon releases excess magical energy in a violent burst. Many dungeons around the world were discovered only after such stampedes occurred. In the early 2000s, the world was thrown into chaos. Stampedes erupted in mountains, deep oceans, and deserted islands. Every discovered dungeon was placed under government control. Nations began recruiting explorers on a massive scale. Humanity gradually adapted to the new world using dungeon resources and knowledge. Even now, however, one serious problem remains. Somewhere in the world, an undiscovered dungeon might be approaching a stampede. It is impossible to search the entire planet for hidden labyrinths. Therefore, the best option is to prevent known dungeons from reaching that point. Even abandoned low-ranked dungeons like Sugai Dungeon must be maintained. That is where cleaners like Toru come in.
Demi-goblins 3. Fuzzballs 2. Fuzzballs 4. Rats 3.
Toru continues eliminating weak monsters while wandering deeper through the labyrinth. More than 2 hours have passed since he entered the dungeon, yet he shows almost no fatigue. There may be another reason beyond simple experience. Some researchers believe humans absorb magical energy when defeating monsters. The process is similar to what games call leveling up. Toru belongs to the generation born after the worlds fused. When he was in middle school, students even had classes where they entered dungeons to fight monsters. Occasionally, someone develops unusual abilities after absorbing magical energy. This phenomenon also occurred among people who were already adults in 1999. Some gained extraordinary physical strength. Some learned magic. Others awakened strange supernatural abilities. Toru gained none of those. For 3 years, he has only continued cleaning weak monsters. Even so, his physical ability has improved. He could probably run a full marathon without much trouble. That is the extent of it. Compared to real explorers, Toru is still weak. Active explorers can run up walls and jump multiple floors of buildings. They are practically monsters themselves.
Rats 2, Fuzzballs 4, Fuzzballs 4, Demi-goblins 2. What was that?
Toru tosses several magic cores into his pouch. Then he tilts his head slightly. He thinks he hears something. Toru pulls out his handheld terminal and checks the stream time.
4 hours, 32 minutes. I think I hear a strange sound. Kind of a ringing noise like tinnitus. It might just be my ears, though. Still, it feels strange, so I will report it. I should leave a comment, too.
The stream has 0 viewers and 0 comments. Toru writes a comment himself. He stands still for a while, listening carefully. The ringing sound does not disappear.
Is the microphone picking this up?
The familiar corridors of Sugai Dungeon suddenly feel strangely distant to him. Toru has never gone below the 5th floor. Something about the dungeon now feels wrong.
I should head back.
When something unusual happens, the correct response is immediate retreat. Anyone who works around dungeons learns that rule very quickly. Toru begins heading back toward the entrance from the 3rd floor. As he returns, he continues smashing every monster he encounters. After leaving the dungeon, he heads to the Sugai Dungeon Branch office at City Hall. Hayasaka Toru is a dungeon cleaner. He has worked under contract with the city government for 3 years. Government offices are built near every dungeon. Since dungeons are under national control, a system for managing them is necessary. That means facilities, staff, and administration. In busy dungeons, explorers sometimes call the office a guild. Toru has never understood that. To him, it is simply a government office. The building is about the size of a small neighborhood post office. There is a reception counter, several departments, and a few civil servants. Since Toru Hayasaka started working as a cleaner, the staff at the Sugai Dungeon Branch have not changed. The section chief responsible for the region is almost never present. Toru has only seen that person once. There are 3 lazy employees. 2 of them almost never show up. The remaining employee is the one who usually deals with Toru.
Hey, it is Toru.
Toru approaches the reception desk with the same sleepy tone he might use 5 minutes after waking up. The clerk behind the counter has looked exactly the same for the past 3 years.
Oh, you're back early today. Skipping work.
The clerk, Kawai Sakiho, glances up from a stream playing on her handheld terminal. It is definitely not Toru's dungeon cleaning stream. At first glance, she looks like a competent professional woman. Toru has never actually seen her show any motivation or skill.
I heard a strange noise halfway through the 3rd floor, so I came back to report it. It might just be my health or something, but it sounded like ringing, kind of like tinnitus. It started around 4 hours, 32 minutes into the stream.
Huh. Thanks for the report.
Sakiho shows absolutely no interest. Toru has known her for 3 years. In that entire time, she has shown kindness maybe 5 times. Most of the time, she simply treats him with the casual contempt reserved for bottom-tier cleaners. She has complained about his work before. That is why Toru started recording his dungeon cleaning as a live stream. The stream serves as proof that he is actually killing monsters. On more than one occasion, she accused him of faking his monster counts. When Toru showed the recorded streams, she reluctantly withdrew the accusations. Even then, she looked like she was the one being treated unfairly. From Toru's perspective, that was completely absurd. Why should a low-paid cleaner be criticized for honestly killing weak monsters all day in the upper floors of a dungeon? Toru never expected sincere help from her anyway. Still, he needed to make the report formally. If anything happened later, it would be easy for someone to blame him. Hayasaka Toru is a convenient target.
Anyway, I made the report. So please buy the magic cores like usual. I will return the streaming equipment too.
Toru places the waste pouch filled with rice grain-sized magic cores onto the counter. Sakiho looks at it like it is roadside trash. Then she glares at Toru.
I have told you this many times. Your kill count is strange. You're supposed to be below D rank, right? But your numbers and speed look like someone above D rank. Are you cheating?
I have already shown proof many times that I am not.
Really? I do not remember that.
She says it with a perfectly calm expression. Toru cannot understand that kind of mentality. He suspects she simply vents her frustrations on him. Being assigned to a dungeon branch where almost no explorers ever visit would be frustrating, especially when the dungeon is already cleared and rated D class. 3 years without reassignment would sour anyone's mood. Still, Toru has no intention of accepting false accusations. Being looked down on is normal. Having crimes invented is different. Cleaners are the lowest tier among dungeon-related workers. No one expects glory from them. Toru never became an explorer who swings swords, casts magic, or cuts off a dragon's head. He cannot block an ogre's strike with brute strength. For 3 years since his parents died, he has simply smashed weak monsters with a bundle of iron rods. He gathers rice grain-sized magic cores and submits them to the office every day. Even so, he pays his taxes. He lives honestly. His work prevents dungeon stampedes. That is still a small contribution to society. No one should have the right to complain about that. Toru has no intention of bragging, but he will not live like he owes the world an apology.
Anyway, the report is done, and my work for today is finished. Good work.
Toru turns and walks away. Sakiho does not reply. When he glances back, she has already returned to watching streams on her device. Toru decides he does not care. After driving his small car back to his rundown apartment, Toru notices he is home earlier than usual. He turns on his personal terminal and checks his dungeon streaming channel. Toru created the account himself. For 2.5 years, he has streamed the exact same boring dungeon cleaning work. Naturally, he has only a handful of subscribers. Toru has no idea who they even are. Almost none of the archived streams ever get watched. Occasionally, a stream gets a comment. It is always the same. The comment reads, "Still alive? Good." Toru replies out of obligation. Spam gets deleted. That is the extent of his channel management. Today, nothing has changed. Toru sighs. Since he already opened the site, he clicks a random recommended video.
Hello everyone, I am Megumi Saito from the A-Rank Explorer Clan Anthem. Our next expedition will be diving into a B-rank dungeon in this prefecture.
A girl about Toru's age smiles brightly at the camera. She is a familiar face from television. The group she belongs to streams dungeon exploration. Every main member is a rank or higher. All of them are women. All of them are beautiful. They look like a group favored by the gods. According to the video, the local government requested their help. A B-rank dungeon in the area has not been explored for some time. They want the group to dive into the lower floors and continue the exploration. The money involved is probably on a completely different scale from Toru's cleaning work.
Right now, the prefectural government has us staying at a hotel in the capital city. The food here is amazing. Airi even said she might gain weight. Hey, do not include that part. Wait, you are keeping it. Well. Anyway, everything was delicious.
Megumi laughs happily while talking with the person behind the camera. The A-rank idle explorer radiates cheerful energy. Anyone watching would think the same thing. This is someone who has very few complaints about life. In simple terms, she shines.
That prefecture is here. If it is a B-rank dungeon near Sugai, it might be Kamioka Dungeon.
Toru does not know when the next expedition will actually happen. The video was probably recorded long ago. It might even be planned as a live dungeon broadcast. Either way, it is a distant world to him. Those explorers walk under the spotlight with talent, luck, and strength. With so much media attention, they will never attempt reckless dives. They will maintain wide safety margins. Even so, they will reach depths ordinary people can never reach, and they will bring many benefits back to humanity.
Well, good luck. Stay safe out there.
The words sound slightly sarcastic, but Toru genuinely means them. Maybe there is a little jealousy. They shine far too brightly compared to him. Still, he does not want to see them fail. They can keep shining somewhere far away. Toru will not actively praise them, but he will not resent them either. If someone at the very bottom started doing that, they would truly be finished.
Man.
Toru sighs out loud. He opens the refrigerator and starts making dinner. When an adult man lives alone long enough, he eventually starts cooking. Cooking tutorials are everywhere on streaming sites.
Looks like the neighbor is not leaving for work tonight.
Toru hears faint sounds through the apartment wall while eating pasta. He turns on the television even though he is not very interested. Time drifts by slowly. Before he becomes too sleepy, he takes a shower. He prepares his work clothes for tomorrow. Then he falls onto the bed. This was the everyday life of Hayasaka Toru. At least it was until this day. The next day, Toru Hayasaka, also known as Tor, switched on his body camera again and confirmed the stream had started. Then he began cleaning the Sugai dungeon. As expected, his report about the strange noise had apparently been ignored completely. There were no signs of an investigation. It did not even seem like anyone had checked the stream. To be fair, Tor himself had forgotten to review the footage and confirm the exact moment when the noise occurred, so he could not complain too strongly.
Rat, 4, Furball, 3, Demigoblin, 1, Furball, 2.
As usual, Tor calmly beat the weak monsters to death, gathered the rice grain-sized magic cores, and descended from the first floor to the second. After cleaning the second floor the same way, he continued down to the third. Then, he walked straight to that place again.
Yeah, I can hear it again.
A high-pitched sound rang through the air. It was like a mosquito tone, like a sharp ringing in the ears. Tor clicked his tongue in annoyance. He should have checked whether the microphone had picked up the sound yesterday. He stood there for a while, just like he had the day before. An explorer idol around his age was currently challenging a B-rank dungeon.
Meanwhile, he was stuck worrying about a mysterious phenomenon inside a D-rank dungeon.
Well, whatever. The moment Tor stepped forward with that half-careless thought in mind, he saw something. There was a human silhouette at the far end of the corridor.
You have got to be kidding.
Tor squinted. The figure was definitely there, about 30 meters away, just barely within the range where the glowing dungeon walls provided enough light to see. A man wearing hakama trousers stood there. Tor reflexively pulled out his terminal and checked the stream timer.
3 hours, 14 minutes. I found a human silhouette at the location of the strange noise. I do not know if it is a human or a humanoid monster. If it is a monster, then it should not exist in the upper layers of the Sugai dungeon. This could be a dungeon rampage, or some unknown anomaly. Maybe. I really do not know.
He simply spoke whatever came to mind into the microphone. Was the camera capturing the silhouette? The figure still stood 30 meters away. Tor glanced at the stream on his phone, but the screen was too small to tell clearly. It might be visible. Or maybe that was just his imagination. Then the silhouette moved. The gesture looked like an invitation, as if the figure was telling him to follow.
I will confirm it. Just confirm it. Then I will run.
Rationally, Tor understood there was only one correct action for a dungeon cleaner who encountered something like this. Immediate retreat. But for some reason, he could not suppress the strange sense of urgency inside his chest. Instead of retreating, Tor started walking toward the direction where the man in hakama had disappeared. The figure continued deeper into the dungeon. Tor followed without running. Every so often, the figure would stop and glance back, as if checking whether Tor was still following.
Damn it. This is definitely bad. If something happens, this will be my responsibility.
If you encounter an abnormal event in a dungeon, retreat immediately and report it. Tor knew that rule perfectly well. If he ignored it, no one would compensate him for the consequences. The cleaning contractor agreement made that very clear, but no one guaranteed his life either.
If something happens, it will be my fault. But I did report the strange noise to the Sugai dungeon branch yesterday. The branch ignored it and did not even start an investigation. Maybe the government office can share a little responsibility.
Tor muttered to himself while continuing to follow the silhouette. They turned right, then left. Tor mentally compared the path to the map of the third floor he had memorized after years of work. But the destination made no sense. They were not heading toward the stairs to the fourth floor. They were not returning to the second floor either. It almost felt like he was being dragged into a pointless prank. Then suddenly the man in hakama walked into the wall.
What?
Just moments earlier, they had been walking down a straight corridor. The figure turned left, and then clearly stepped into the wall. Tor stood there with at least 10 question marks floating inside his head. Eventually, he reached the wall and placed his hand against it, or rather he tried to. His hand sank straight into the wall. No. The wall had never been real. It was disguised by something like a hologram or a spatial projection. If you used magical terminology, it was simply an illusion, a hidden passage.
Are you serious right now?
The Sugai dungeon had been officially cleared 5 years ago. Tor himself had started working as a cleaner 2 years after that. Before cleaners were hired, city employees supposedly cleaned the dungeon a few times each year. Yet Tor had never heard anything about a hidden passage like this. Honestly, there had been no clues at all. No one would bother thoroughly searching the shallow layers of a D-rank dungeon. Even Tor had walked these halls for 3 years without noticing anything. Beyond the illusion wall was a small room, about the size of 8 tatami mats. For a dungeon chamber, it felt unusually small. Tor did not know much about other dungeons, so maybe rooms like this were normal. On the far wall, something hung there. It looked like a painting. A painting on a dungeon wall? Tor stepped forward suspiciously. Then the floor vanished. He fell straight through the illusion that had been disguised as solid ground, and dropped into darkness. When an object begins falling freely, it can drop more than 7 meters in a single second. That calculation ignores air resistance. From Tor's perspective, the fall lasted more than 10 seconds, probably less than 30. His first thought was simple.
I am dead.
B-rank explorers could supposedly survive the impact of freefall without serious injury. Of course, that assumed they landed properly. But even so, it showed how abnormal explorers really were. Some C-rank explorers could cancel the impact using magic or abilities. Others might survive through sheer physical strength. Tor was below D-rank. He was not even an explorer, just a dungeon cleaner. He was certain he would die. He considered shouting one final insult at fate. Unfortunately, he could not think of anything clever. More importantly, he had no time to think while falling. The impact came, and it was far weaker than he expected. It felt like dropping from a ledge half a meter high. Tor had instinctively curled his body during the fall, which likely saved his head. Instead, he slammed his back against the ground.
Gah.
The air was violently forced from his lungs. But that was all. Tor immediately forced himself upright and checked his body.
Legs fine? Arms fine? Back hurts but not broken? Neck okay? Why am I even alive?
Tor stopped mid-sentence. A powerful sense of danger forced him to turn around. The scenery looked almost identical to the Sugai dungeon. Dimly glowing dungeon walls. A corridor carved from stone-like structures. Tor had landed in the center of a long, straight passage. The corridor stretched at least 60 meters in both directions. And at the far end of that corridor stood something. A black ogre. An ogre-type monster. At minimum, a C-rank threat. A massive humanoid creature packed with muscle. Horns grew from its head like the demons in old folk tales. Killing intent radiated from its body and made the air tremble. Anyone could tell immediately. This was a lethal enemy. Its eyes glowed in the darkness like a wild animal. It was staring directly at Tor.
Damn it.
Without thinking, Tor grabbed his iron rebar club from the ground and started sprinting in the opposite direction. Then he remembered a random fact about wild bears. Never turn your back. It was already too late. From the moment Tor started running to the moment the ogre began chasing him was about 2 seconds. The ogre caught him less than a second after that. In an instant, the black ogre was right behind him. Any attack from that creature would be fatal. Even a casual flick of its finger might explode his skull. Tor threw his iron club behind him. Actually, he barely managed to release it. Running at full speed left him no room for a proper throw. Of course, it did nothing. The ogre brushed the weapon aside like an annoying insect. The next moment, Tor himself was launched forward, more than 20 meters down the corridor. The ogre probably had not even intended to attack seriously, just a light shove. Yet that single casual motion sent a grown man flying through the air. Tor slammed into the floor and rolled across the stone. Then he used the momentum to bounce back to his feet.
Does it hurt? I do not even know. I am alive, but I am definitely going to die.
Despite that certainty, Tor started running again.
Damn it.
The corridor stretched endlessly ahead of him. It felt like running inside a dream where your legs refused to move properly. Tor wondered if time was slowing down instead of showing him a death flashback. In another second, maybe 2 breaths, the black ogre would punch straight through his back, or crush his skull, or slam him into the ground, and that would be the end. In that stretched moment of time, Tor saw the man in Hakama again, only 5 meters ahead. Even though the corridor was perfectly straight, the figure casually turned right and walked into the wall. Another illusion wall. Tor dove forward in a desperate rolling leap. Pure instinct. The ogre would strike in the next instant anyway. If he could avoid even one attack, it was worth trying. Miraculously, the timing aligned. The black ogre leapt over Tor as he rolled across the floor. Tor barely managed a shallow breath. There was no time to celebrate the miracle. He crawled like an insect across the ground and slipped through the illusion wall. He entered a room. This one was larger, around 20 square meters. Floor, walls, ceiling, nothing else. No, something was there. In the center of the room, 2 swords were stabbed into the ground. One was a Western-style sword, long blade, long grip. A sleek design, a hand and a half-sword. The other was a katana. Its blade was a dark red-black color. The guard and handle were black. The blade looked about 70 centimeters long. The 2 weapons stood very close together, less than a meter apart. Tor reached for both of them without thinking. He did not wonder why 2 weapons were embedded in the floor in a hidden chamber. He did not question the ominous aura around the katana. He did not question the strangely sacred feeling radiating from the Western sword. None of that mattered. He was about to die. There were weapons in front of him. Fighting back was the only option. Tor grabbed the sword with his right hand, and the katana with his left. He pulled both blades from the floor. Then his consciousness went dark. Chapter 4. Sometimes during a dream, a person suddenly realizes this is a dream. When someone becomes aware of that and can even control their actions inside the dream, it is called a lucid dream. But Toru Hayasaka could not control anything in this one. He simply understood that it was a dream. It felt like being thrown into the center of outer space. There was no sense of ground. Front, back, left, and right were unclear. Countless lights flickered far away in the distance, yet nothing existed nearby. There was light, yet everything was dark. As Tor drifted through that empty space, a glowing sphere suddenly appeared. It was not solid like a ball. It looked more like a mass of light. Its size was roughly the size of a human head, maybe a little smaller. Tor immediately felt something strange.
That is me.
There was no logical explanation. If he looked at the back of his hand, he knew it was his hand. If an alarm rang beside his pillow, he knew it was his phone. It was not analysis or judgment. It was simple recognition. He just knew. The glowing mass floating before him was himself. The light shimmered somewhere between white and orange. It glowed softly while wavering like a drifting flame. It did not look solid. It felt more like gas than matter. It looked like something you could never grab even if you tried. Then suddenly half of the light vanished.
What?
It was as if someone had sliced a watermelon clean in half with a huge kitchen knife. The entire left side of the glowing mass disappeared. The remaining light looked like a half moon. Then, slowly, it began to restore itself, like the moment when a solar eclipse ends. But the color had changed. The orange glow returned as a pale blue light. Now the sphere was split perfectly down the middle. 2 different colors of light, one side pale blue, the other side still orange. Tor felt something without any reasoning.
Half of me was eaten and turned into something else.
Then the orange side began to change as well. The color slowly spread inward from the edge. It was not sunset red. It looked like blood, a deep scarlet color. In the end, the sphere became 2 colors, one half pale blue, the other half deep crimson.
Even so, this is still me.
That was how it felt. Not understanding, not deduction, just recognition. He knew that this was himself, even though the original color was gone. Even so, this was still Toru Hayasaka. Tor later felt like he had dreamed something like that. But when he woke up, the first thing he checked was something far simpler. Was he alive or dead? His arms and legs moved. His heart was beating. There were no obvious injuries. He was still in the same room beyond the illusion wall. Tor glanced toward the entrance of the room. Maybe the black ogre had been unable to pass through the illusion wall. But someone else was standing there. A woman with pale blonde hair. She wore Western-style armor. Light armor protected her chest, shoulders, shins, and legs. The armor shone with a pale blue tint. She was kneeling on one knee while watching the entrance of the room. She was not very tall. Compared to Tor, who was 174 centimeters tall, she looked about a head shorter. Her body was slender even beneath the armor. Her pale gold hair was simply tied behind her neck.
Oh, you are awake. How do you feel?
The woman glanced back at Tor and smiled warmly. It was the kind of smile that came naturally to someone who treated kindness as normal.
How do I feel? More importantly, who are you?
Tor answered her question with another question. He was still in the same position he had been in while checking his body. He did not even know whether he should be on guard.
I am Tia. Something like the spirit that was attached to the holy sword Lightbringer that you pulled out. Right now, I am manifested like this.
She said it with a slightly embarrassed smile. Her expression and gestures were cuter than most idols. But Tor cared far more about what she had just said.
The holy sword Lightbringer, and you were the spirit attached to it.
Lightbringer is this.
Tia lifted the western sword she was holding. The blade was around 1 meter long, yet she handled it as easily as if it were a wooden stick.
You were the one who pulled it out.
And what do you mean by spirit attached to it?
Well, it is a little embarrassing, but it seems my memories, thoughts, and soul were stuck to Lightbringer somehow. I think it is because the sword connects with the soul of its owner. Honestly, I'm surprised too.
Tia laughed shyly, but Tor could not simply ignore what she was saying. He stood up and shook his head several times before speaking again.
Wait. Just wait a second. Your memories and soul were stuck to the sword, and it connects to the owner's soul. That sounds like a mythic class item.
After the worlds fused together, several legendary items had been discovered. A ring that allowed the wearer to fly freely, a magic staff that devoured the owner's mana and the surrounding mana to fire blasts powerful enough to pierce mountains, a sword that amplified its wielder's magic and wrapped its blade in lightning, a device that allowed instant teleportation between designated spaces with no cost. Items like those were called legendary class. But mythic class items were even rarer. According to the textbooks Tor studied in middle school, only 2 had ever been confirmed. One was the core of a barrier generator owned by the elves of the Atlantis continent that appeared during the world fusion. The other was the divine spear carried by an S-rank explorer who had slaughtered countless monsters during the dungeon rampages of the early 2000s. No magic, artifact, or cursed item that directly interfered with a living soul had ever been discovered. If Tia was telling the truth, Lightbringer possessed mythic-level power.
That might be right. The holy sword was created when spirits gathered stardust and an ancient dragon swallowed it. The stardust was forged inside the dragon's body. That is how Lightbringer was born. It connects to the owner's soul and refuses anyone else who tries to use it. Of course that goes beyond human understanding.
Tia smiled proudly. But Tor did not care about the smile of a beautiful woman at the moment. He sighed and covered his face with one hand. First, he needed to think. What Lightbringer truly was could wait. Who Tia really was could also wait.
First, we need to escape.
Tor completely ignored the blonde swordswoman and pulled out his phone to check the stream. There was no connection. Dungeons were far too vast for normal signals to reach. On the surface, radio waves were often disrupted by magical devices as well. In modern society, magical communication had replaced normal signals. Even batteries were no longer ordinary storage batteries. They were mana-charged devices fueled by magic cores like the ones Tor collected every day. In any case, if magical communication was not working, then either his device was broken or he had moved too far away from the relay station installed in the Sugai dungeon. Tor checked his body camera just in case. It was not working. The black ogre must have broken it. Or perhaps something else had.
Hey, what are you doing?
Tia tilted her head curiously. Tor briefly noticed the blade of the holy sword she held. The dull gray metal looked strangely blunt.
I am trying to understand the situation. Can I ask you something?
Of course, if it is something I can answer.
She nodded immediately. From the beginning, she had been completely friendly. She had not forced conversation on Tor when he was confused. She had simply waited quietly. She was probably a good person. If that kindness was actually fake, Tor would have to raise his level of distrust toward humanity. He would prefer not to live that way.
That sword, Lightbringer, it does not look like it has an edge.
The blade looked dull and gray like lead. Even from a distance, it was clear there was no sharp edge. Of course, a 1-meter bar of metal would still be dangerous as a blunt weapon. Tor himself had fought with a rebar club for years. But a mythic weapon forged from stardust inside a dragon should not simply be a blunt stick.
Oh, this! It creates a mana blade when striking. But Lightbringer is not specialized for cutting attacks. Its true power is against the wicked, undead, spirits, evil beings, demons, magical creatures. It is especially effective against them.
Tia proudly raised the sword. Tor could not confirm whether it was true, but she did not sound like she was lying.
Fine. I will accept that for now. Next question. You said you were a spirit attached to the sword, but you clearly have a physical body. You are even holding the sword.
That is because I am manifested. It is easier to show you than explain.
Tia raised the sword toward Tor.
Watch carefully.
Then she vanished. She literally disappeared. The sword fell to the floor with a heavy metallic sound.
You disappeared.
Yes. And I can manifest again like this.
Her voice came from behind him. Tor jumped back and turned around. Tia stood there with a slightly apologetic smile. Her expression looked completely human. Unlike the ghost-type monsters Tor had seen in Explorer's dreams, there was no unnatural aura about her. She simply looked like a young woman, a kind-looking one. Tia walked quietly across the room and picked up the holy sword. She stared at the blade with a complicated expression.
Lightbringer connects to the soul of its owner. Its ability to defeat demons and evil spirits is not only because the sword itself has holy attributes. It also has the power to interfere with the spiritual world outside physical reality. It does not strike the outer body of a manifested demon. It strikes the demon's true essence, its astral body. That is possible because the sword connects to the owner's soul.
I do not really understand. Astral body.
I can explain the details later if you need them. The important part is this. Lightbringer has already set you as its owner.
I thought it rejected anyone except its owner.
I am probably considered part of the Holy Sword as well. I called myself a spirit attached to it, but the truth is that part of my soul remained inside Lightbringer.
Tia smiled awkwardly again. Then she spun the sword smoothly and hooked the metal fitting near the guard onto the back of her armor, carrying it across her back. The movement was effortless. The sword should have been heavy, but she moved as if it weighed nothing.
Hey, can you tell me your name?
Toru Hayasaka. Hayasaka is my family name. Toru is my given name. When I enter a dungeon, I use the name Tor.
Then I will call you Tor.
Do whatever you want.
Let me introduce myself properly. I am Tia. I was the previous owner of the Holy Sword Lightbringer. Right now I'm using your soul to manifest in this world. In other words, I am a ghost attached to the Holy Sword.
Tor froze. He was not surprised. It felt more like recognition. In his dream, half of his soul had turned pale blue. That light had been Tia, a pure glow worthy of the bearer of a holy sword.
Wait, where did the other one go?
If Tia was using half of his soul, then the other half must belong to the second blade, the katana that had turned his soul deep crimson.
That one is not really a normal sword. It is more like a cursed artifact, a cursed blade. It should have embedded itself into your soul as well, so you can probably pull it out.
Tia spoke with clear discomfort. Tor did not ask what she meant, because he already knew. That same strange feeling of recognition told him the truth. Chapter 5. Toru Hayasaka spoke his current objective out loud.
First thing, we escape. If we do not, we die.
Toru looked at Tia, who nodded calmly with the holy sword resting across her back. Now that he looked at her properly again, she really was beautiful. Her platinum blonde hair was tied loosely behind her neck. Her large blue eyes reminded him of a friendly kitten. She stood about a head shorter than Toru. Even with the pale blue light armor attached to several parts of her body, it was clear she was slender for someone who fought with a sword. Her facial features were different from a typical Japanese face, so estimating her age was difficult. She did not look like she was in her 30s at all. She could pass for 18. If someone told him she was 26, he would be surprised, but he would probably accept it. She did not look like the bearer of a holy sword. And yet it was obvious she was exactly that. Simply standing there and looking back at Toru, her posture had absolutely no openings.
Hey, Toru. Escaping sounds good and all. But where exactly are we? And how did things end up with you drawing Lightbringer and that red-black sword?
Right? I guess I never shared the situation with you.
From my perspective, the Holy Sword found its next owner and connected to your soul. my consciousness suddenly became clear. When I tried to manifest physically, I succeeded. When I appeared, you were collapsed, and the sword that had been in front of you had vanished.
Tia raised both hands in an easy gesture of surrender and smiled casually. It did not seem like she was careless. She simply seemed confident. No matter where they were or what situation they were in, she believed she could handle it.
All right? I will explain what happened on my side. Even if you have questions, just listen until I finish the whole story.
Toru explained that he worked as a labyrinth cleaner. Yesterday, during a cleaning job, he had heard a strange ringing in his ears. The ringing happened again today, and then a mysterious figure wearing hakama appeared. He chased the figure down a straight corridor. The figure was absorbed into a wall midway through the passage. When Toru touched the wall, he discovered it was an illusion wall. Beyond it was a small room, and even the floor of that room turned out to be an illusion. Then he fell. For some reason, Toru was not injured when he landed. A black ogre stood at the far end of a long, straight corridor. Toru tried to escape, but it was catching up to him. Then he saw the hakama-wearing figure again. The figure vanished into another wall. Toru fled into the illusion wall and found 2 weapons stuck into the center of the room. Desperate and about to be killed by the ogre, Toru grabbed the sword and the katana.
Then I blacked out. When I woke up, you were there.
Call me Tia, not you.
Maybe if I feel like it.
You're kind of mean, Toru, but fine. If what you call a labyrinth is the same thing I know, you probably stepped on a teleport trap.
Tia nodded thoughtfully. Toru clapped his hands once in agreement.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The free fall felt way too long. If you ignore air resistance, a 15-second fall is about 1 kilometer.
In reality, air resistance and mass would complicate the calculation, so 15 seconds would probably be about half that distance. In any case, falling 500 meters and remaining unharmed made no sense. A teleport trap was the most reasonable explanation.
It sounds like you're thinking about something complicated. I think you should focus on something else.
Something else?
Instead of asking why, you should ask what we do next.
Tia narrowed her eyes slightly as if mildly exasperated. Toru nodded. He could not argue with that at all.
Fair enough. Suppose it was a teleport trap. Probably a one-way teleport trap. That means our current location is unknown, the escape route is unknown, and we do not even know if the structure allows escape. If this place requires teleportation to leave, that would be really bad.
If this is truly a labyrinth, it must have a structure that allows escape.
Tia spoke with complete certainty. Toru tilted his head. He had never heard such a thing before.
You see, a labyrinth is kind of like a growth on the world. Mana, spirit energy, divine power, things like that gather and form labyrinths. But the essential nature of a labyrinth is that it wants to release what is inside it.
I do not really understand.
Think about it. Labyrinths have corridors people can walk through, monsters humans can fight, traps that can be disarmed, and treasure. They clearly invite people in, and if destroying the core makes the labyrinth disappear, why make the core reachable at all?
Right. They could just put it somewhere humans cannot reach.
Labyrinths are meant to be conquered. That is their nature, which means escape must exist.
Tia smiled encouragingly. Toru felt strangely reassured and let out a wry smile.
Either way, we cannot stay locked in this room until we die. I do not know how reliable you are, but I will rely on you.
Go ahead. You can rely on me. I can probably defeat something like a fire dragon while protecting you.
Tia spoke casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. The strength of the holy sword wielder Tia quickly proved to be real. Toru was not skilled enough to properly measure someone else's strength, but Tia could kill a black ogre with a single strike. Toru had no idea how that compared to other explorers. But if his life was no longer in danger, all he had to do was walk through the labyrinth while memorizing its structure. He had expected to struggle if it was the type of labyrinth that constantly forced explorers through teleport traps, but fortunately that did not seem to be the case. The long, straight corridor eventually ended at a T intersection about 500 meters away. It was probably a labyrinth with unusually long hallways. Whether this was the Sugai dungeon or not was still unclear. After all, he had probably been teleported. It was possible they had been moved to a completely different labyrinth. The Sugai dungeon was a D-class dungeon that had already been fully explored, and black ogres had never been reported there. That possibility seemed quite high. While thinking about all of this, Toru watched Tia walking a few meters ahead of him. She walked casually with no tension at all. The holy sword remained strapped to her back.
Originally, the sword did not even have a sheath or fittings. The blade itself cannot cut, so a sheath was not really necessary, but it was inconvenient to carry around. So I begged a dwarf blacksmith to attach some hardware to the guard.
Tia smiled nostalgically. Toru wondered when that had happened, and whether that story even belonged to this world. Somehow, he felt like it did not. Perhaps the past she talked about came from the other world that existed before the fusion. Toru kept that thought to himself since he had no proof. The silence felt slightly awkward. He pulled his mobile terminal from his pocket and checked the signal. Still no connection. Probably an unexplored region. According to the time on his device, 26 hours had passed since he entered the Sugai dungeon. He must have been unconscious for a long time.
Even so, I am not that hungry, and I am not tired either.
That is the effect of Lightbringer. Besides astral attacks, it also nullifies intermediate and lower magic attacks, nullifies mental magic, grants strong resistance against dragons, and provides automatic recovery. Nothing hurts on your body, right?
Tia answered Toru's muttering as if it were obvious.
If that is true, then it really is Mythic class.
The passive abilities were absurd. If Toru had not seen Tia wield the holy sword with his own eyes, and if he had not watched her appear and materialize earlier, he would never have believed it.
Oh, another black ogre.
Tia spotted a monster down the corridor and suddenly began running. She crossed more than 30 meters almost instantly. 3 streaks of light appeared in the air. Then they vanished. Lightbringer normally looked dull and heavy like lead, but during combat the blade emitted a pale blue glow. The holy attribute contained in the sword resonated with Tia's own mana. The strongest person Toru had ever seen in real life was the director of the labyrinth department. He looked like an exhausted middle-aged man in a suit. But when Toru met him face to face, he had felt a chill run down his spine. They had only exchanged a few words on a few occasions. Even so, the moment they stood face to face, Toru understood the difference in their biological rank. Like a small child instinctively realizing that if an adult truly became angry, resistance would be impossible. A clear and cruel difference. Toru had felt that gap. No amount of swinging a bundle of welded steel rods would make a difference. Compared to that department director, Tia was probably far stronger. Even a former A-class explorer would not be able to swat ogres aside the way Toru kicked away furballs and giant rats.
I am back.
Tia returned at ridiculous speed, holding a fist-sized magic core. Toru had no space left in his waist pouch, so he took off his jacket, wrapped the cores inside it, and carried it like a bundle. After an entire day of work, Toru usually gathered enough magic cores to equal 1 or 2 pieces of sushi in volume. Their value was roughly 3,000 yen. Each magic core from the upper levels of the Sugai dungeon was about the size of a grain of rice. Even so, repeating that work 20 days a month earned him 60,000 yen on top of his cleaner contract. The magic core dropped by the black ogre Tia killed would probably sell for at least 300,000 yen, possibly even more than 600,000.
So magic cores are still worth money in this era?
I do not know when you lived, but yeah, they are valuable. And I am poor. I cannot carry mountains of them, but leaving them behind makes my heart die a little.
That makes sense. Money is important.
Tia accepted that explanation surprisingly easily. After that, she seemed to be considerate and only killed monsters that blocked their path. 4 hours passed after leaving the room where the swords had been stuck into the floor. Finally, they discovered a staircase that led both upward and downward. Actually, there had been an illusion wall in the middle of a staircase between the A floor and B floor. The place Toru and Tia had been exploring was essentially a hidden mid-B floor.
That is an incredibly malicious structure.
Yeah. I have never seen anything like this either. It probably has nothing to do with conquering the labyrinth. That is why it ended up with such a strange layout.
Hypothetically, what would happen if Lightbringer was left inside a labyrinth and the dungeon core was destroyed?
I am not certain, but maybe another labyrinth with a similar structure would appear somewhere else. Labyrinths are like the world correcting contradictions. Rather than letting Lightbringer disappear, it would probably teleport it somewhere.
I see.
Toru did not fully understand, but maybe that was simply how labyrinths worked. They climbed the stairs. It seemed they had escaped the malicious zone. Toru did not know which floor they were on now, but they had finally reached a proper labyrinth level. He let out a quiet breath. Then he suddenly remembered something and checked his mobile terminal. The signal had returned. Finally some good news. But when Toru looked toward Tia, her expression had changed. The cheerful smile she had worn until now had vanished. Her face was completely serious. A chill ran down Toru's spine. Standing in front of a being of overwhelming strength made his instincts scream. Almost at the same moment, the holy sword wielder dashed forward. Toru watched her back disappear into the corridor. 2 seconds later, he heard the loud metallic sound of a sword falling to the ground far away. A moment after that, Tia was suddenly standing right beside him again.
Toru, it looks like I cannot move more than a certain distance away from you. Sorry for suddenly running off. Since I already messed up, could you run in that direction for me? Hurry! Quickly!
Tia spoke rapidly with intense urgency. Toru struggled to process the flood of information.
I do not understand. Why do I need to run? What is over there?
Someone is being attacked by monsters. We have to save them.